Hello and welcome, Seawolves. I hope you have something delicious ready in your cup, because I have some delicious coffee here and I have two absolutely amazing guests for another really cool interview in our series looking into the Vendee Globe and the Imoca technology and all of the just super cool stuff that you guys are just as much interested in as me. So shall we raise a glass to start this interview? And actually you guys also have some drinks here. We're in the podcast studio Rotterdam here, so we're actually going to do this nice and fancy. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. That's a pretty good start of any interview, right? I think a little coffee there. So welcome, Pieter Heerema. Of course, for this audience, really needs no introduction. Finished the last Vendee Globe in the 17th place, I think. Fantastic, really enthusiastic to hear your stories and your insights. And we're also joined by Riemer Wittenveen. And yeah, Riemer is, I think, a Dutch sailing journalism institution, almost we can say. Anything sailing related, Riemer knows about it. And you were actually there, I think, when Pieter finished.
I was there when he started, and I was there when he finished. Yeah.
That's what I mean with Riemer is an institution. When everything happens in sailing, then Riemer is there. And so you're also here in the interview. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
And I think that the audience, of course, is very interested to hear a lot of technical things about the boat that you sailed and all of the. You had one of the most modern, most advanced boats actually in that fleet that particular year. So I think that they're going to be very interested in that. But let's start at the beginning. How did you get into the Vendee Globe, and what was the moment for you that really had you made the decision like I'm going to actually do this myself?
Yeah, the Vendee Globe had been on my mind for many years after I visited the start. But for all kinds of reasons, I didn't do it, and I didn't know how really to get into it. We don't have any Vendee Globe history or experience in the Netherlands, so there was nobody I could really turn to. But then by chance, I met Michel Deschaux sometime before, and I started talking to him, and he said, "Well, give it a try." So that's how I entered it, by chance running into Michel.
Yeah, and we had a bit of a pre-talk. You said that he also tested you a little bit, or screened you actually a little bit to feel if you were the type of person that might attempt something like that. Can you tell a bit about that?
Yes, well, we had several get-togethers, some lunch, and I visited him a few times, and he was really probing, like, what is this kind of what kind of guy is this this Dutchman? So that was very interesting, and I think very good, because one thing is, of course, you have to sail well, but there's much more. How practical are you? How practical is your mind? How creative are you in finding solutions? Because you cannot tow a reserve boat behind you with all the spares, and you have to solve a lot of problems. So he was firing questions at me at moments that you were not that I was not expecting it. And then he said, "How would you solve this?" Ooh, well, and then at a certain moment he said, "Well, I think you can give it a try."
So that's quite something, because usually people in the Vendee, they have a background in the Mini Transat or in the Figaro. How did you prepare for this? How did you know how to respond to these questions?
I didn't know how to respond to the questions, but it was... I think what he tested is how creative are you to find a solution for something, and not for something that you have seen before, but something that is a new problem. For example, he had once in one of his Vendee Globes, his engine couldn't start anymore. And then he made a pulley system, connected it to the boom, jibed, that spun his engine as a starter engine, as a starter motor. And that's how he started his engine every time he had to charge his batteries.
My God.
Well, that happens once in your life.
Yeah.
You cannot prepare for that. And that's the kind of things that he asked. And how creative is your mindset?
Yeah, so you're basically saying you have to kind of have that real open creativity to be able to solve problems that can be so varied and so wild, and you just have no idea what's going to come at you.
And the French are very good at that. Huh? As I told one of my friends that I told this, I said, "Yeah, those French, they're a bit chaotic, but they're extremely good at improvising." And he said, "Yeah, have you ever owned a French car?"
Yeah, exactly. You have to improvise, right? Yeah. Do you think that that also is part of the Vendee Globe and I think the Imoca class DNA, that it is so innovative, because it is, as a class, really driving a lot of innovation with the foils, with the wing mast, all this type. There's a lot of really cool stuff coming out of every Vendee Globe and the TGV and all the type of races, the Imoca races. Is that central to it?
Yes, I think so. The Imoca class is a free class. It's a box rule. The boat just has to fit well
in the box,
in a sort of box.
Yeah.
And inside that, there's a lot of freedom. There's also limitations, so you have to wiggle past the limitations along the rules. And the class is very good at that. But the French, as a people, are also very, very good at finding the mazes in the net.
Yeah. How was that for you to get into that? Because as I understand it, before you decided to do the Vendee Globe, not only had you, I think, never sailed in a Imoca boat before, but you actually never solo sailed before.
I never solo sailed until 6 months before the start.
That's like you have to explain us a little bit how you.
And there's hope for everybody.
I guess Seawolves, if you're watching this and you're thinking, can I maybe one day, if I really want to? Yes, you can. But of course, you did sail a lot, because have you been sailing all your life?
Yes, I've sailed all my life.
Okay.
And I've generally fixed my boats always all myself. I've raced all my life, and I've also cruised all my life. And so I was used to some aspects of the
you did
sailing.
come to it with a lot of experience of the different things that can happen.
But I had no experience whatsoever in solo sailing, and no experience whatsoever in the types of super lightweight ocean going boats.
So the first time you stepped foot on such a boat, was it a shock to you? Because you had this idea, I'm going to do the Vendee Globe, and then you don't have any solo sailing experience. And then the first time you set foot on such a boat, it must be mind-blowing.
Yeah, especially as the boat that I eventually ended up with was at that time the absolute newest generation boat. The boat had never touched water.
How did that happen, actually? Maybe let's move back one step. Like, how did you go from having never set foot on an Imoca basically and never solo sailed to then
the newest boat possible,
becoming an owner of one of the newest boats possible, like that?
Well, I think the most important thing was that I didn't know what I was getting into. So also I didn't know what was going to happen next, so I was not afraid, and I didn't stop, because had I known in beforehand the next steps, I might have stopped much earlier.
Ignorance is bliss, right?
Sometimes.
Absolutely, it's fantastic. Niet that's Dutch. Okay. Well, yeah. How? First I bought a very old boat, a very simple boat, but. I think I sailed that for 2 days and 1 night from one harbor to the other, and then decided that was not going to be the boat. I think I was right, because it sank soon after I sold it.
Okay.
And then we got a call, because there were no boats on the market anymore. It was very late in the preparation cycle, and then we got a call that there was a brand new boat out of a project that had financially run aground, and we decided to buy that one. Also because the resale value would be much better.
Yeah.
Did you see the boat before you bought it?
No. No,
Okay.
in the blind.
Amazing, right?
And you knew what you were buying, right?
Yeah.
A new foiling boat, never touched water.
Yeah, but I didn't know what that meant. I know the words, but I didn't know what it meant because I'd never sailed on a foiling boat. I'd never seen a foiling boat, and there was a lot of unknowns.
How was that then when you first actually stepped on board? Like, was it like stepping on board of a UFO, or how did you feel, and how did you wrap your mind around that?
Well, the first time we went out sailing, there was lots of people on board, and they all knew. You know, everybody who was on board knew 100 times more than I knew. And they were all fiddling with this and that and foils and, this is interesting. And I was just, fuck, what is this? What is that?
You never sailed before with foils either.
No.
How was that?
Well, I went with my kids. I went to Spain a few months later to do some sailing on a moth, just because I wanted to know what foiling was.
Mm-hmm.
I had no clue. I had no clue.
Wow.
I didn't know. I didn't understand the boats. I'd never sailed with water ballast. I'd never sailed with a mast that twists. I'd never sailed with a keel that swings from port to starboard. Double rudders. Everything was new for me. Everything.
Mm-hmm. And did that get you long to actually kind of grasp the basics of it so that you can actually do it yourself? Or how long did it take you to actually be able to go out on your own with that boat?
Well, I bought the boat in, I think, September or October. And it had never touched water, so it was untested. And as you know, a boat that is new is actually not a boat yet.
Yeah.
And then very soon after that, the Jacques Vabre started. And by the time they reached Finisterre, I think of the new boats, there were 6 new boats of the new generation. One was mine. I didn't do the Jacques Vabre because so there were 5 of the new boats, and I think by Finisterre, 4 of them had already sank, dismasted, turned upside down.
So you were feeling confident.
And one reached Brazil and went back on a freighter because it was a total wreck, and he was very, very happy to reach Brazil. So that was very promising for the new generation of boats.
Because you didn't want to foil in the beginning with the Vendee Globe, because the boat that you bought before wasn't a foiling boat. It was a boat from the previous generation, and then all of a sudden you end up with this new machine.
No, and even today, after 4 or 5 years of experience in foiling, still I believe, like Jean Le Cas is doing, if you want to be more sure to get around, you take a non-foiling boat. And a non-foiling boat you cannot win with a non-foiling boat, but you have a bigger chance to come back with the boat.
What do you think about the new generation of boats that are sailing in the Vendee Globe now? Like the fact that they are such a razor margin away from, literally one of them broke in half in this particular Vendee Globe. Super, super unexpected. We still don't know exactly what happened there, but they seem to be very, very close to the edge. How do you see that from your experience?
Well, I think the Imocas have always been built on the edge. Also, the previous generation and the generation ahead of that, the most reliable boats are the ones that are maybe about 8 to 10 years old, because they've been repaired and tested and repaired again. So those are the most reliable boats. All the new boats are problematic because they've all been built to the margin, and that remains so, and that will always remain, because that's also the DNA of the class. And if you want to win, you have to go extreme. But the problem is, you also have a very, very small chance of finishing in one piece.
But your point was not winning the race, but still you went extreme.
Yeah, but I had no choice, because I was so late in the game that there were no boats for sale anymore.
Wasn't it possible to remove the foils?
Yes, we discussed that. We talked about it to remove it, but that would a boat of that generation could sail without foils, at most wind angles and most conditions, but not in all. Today, the newest generation boats the foiling boats cannot sail without the foils because they're more narrow, especially in the back, so they have less stability from their hull shape. But in the generation boat that I had, nobody knew really about foils and how they would last and so on. So those boats were a little bit sort of hybrid, that you could still sail them without foils.
If you were ever to do the Vendee Globe again, we'll talk about that possibility later, but if you would have to build a new boat now, what would you do differently? Like how would you, what would be the key things that you would change if you had to design a new boat for doing
would
the
it have
Vendee again?
foils?
Would it have foils? Yeah.
It depends what the goal is. If it would be for myself and the goal would be to make it around, and if it was for myself, I would not do the foils. It would make the boat safer. It would make the boat especially also more simple. Less that can go wrong, less that can break, less that can catch whales and containers and other things. So I would not, but I would not aim. I would never aim at winning the Vendee Globe.
Yeah.
But if I would support a team that wants to win the Vendee Globe, then you have to have foils.
But would you change anything else? Like, so you would have to go foiling, but would there be anything that you think you would do in order to still increase that chance of not, running into, I guess, the breakages that we've been seeing so far?
You can calculate if you add 200 kilos, how much more time, how much more hours you need to do the trip. And so I don't know what it is, but say for 200 kilos you lose 12 hours or 24 hours or whatever. My belief is very strongly that the hours lost on repairing things or being worried about things or being restless about things that can break, that those hours are many more than the hours you lose by strengthening the boat a bit more. If you see how many miles Alex lost by gluing his stringers in the front, if he would have had 50 or 100 kilos more of carbon there, the boat would have come home shiny and fine, he would not have lost. He lost just on gluing that front part. He lost, I think, 400 plus miles.
Yeah, 2 days more or less. I think day and a half.
Well, that would be more than 400 miles. And if you don't spend that time repairing, you spend it sailing, and you spend it looking at the weather, and you spend it with in your mind. You feel much better.
Yeah. Maybe a little bit of a sidestep, but I think it's very interesting to kind of discuss this also. You came at the Vendee Globe, of course, a bit as an outsider, because not a big ocean sailor or a solo sailor. So
or French.
Or French, exactly. How was your experience of, diving kind of headfirst into this, very heavily culturally also French thing? Like, how was it to sort of make your way through that and actually qualify and get yourself into that race that way once you've decided that you were going to do it?
A culture shock.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the French are special people. They have and the French sailing world has a huge experience, so they know a lot. And I knew very little. At the same time, I have to fit in that boat. I have to sail it. Yeah. So there was from both sides quite a lot of fireworks at moments to understand what the other needed and wanted and how it should be. And I had a very small team, but I had one or two absolute top guys helping me. One is now the boss of the Imoca class, Antoine Mermot, and we have had huge run-ins, huge fights, because I'm quite thick-skulled.
You are Dutch, huh?
I'm Dutch and straightforward, and he is very headed and very French. So that gave big clashes, but we've worked fantastically together when we found the way how to do it. And his experience and his technical knowledge have been super important. And what he's also been extremely good at, which I had not expected, was once I was at sea and problems came up, it was possible, even though English is not my mother tongue and certainly not his mother tongue, it was possible over the satellite phone to steer me in ways how I could repair something. Or what he was also extremely good at, what I had not expected, was when I was in a really, really deep mental hole, to get me out of it. In fact, what he did was nothing. Just say, okay, Peter, take it easy, go to sleep, and when you've slept an hour, call me again. And that makes a huge difference, because you're all fired up and I want to solve it now and I can't see the solution. And we Dutch, we always think that the French are patata patata. And I said, calm down, eat something, go to sleep, and call me in an hour.
Would you say that a project like this with such a little amount of preparation would not have been possible without French help?
Oh, absolutely. I think such a project is not possible without French help, because we have no experience. We don't know the boat. We don't know nothing. And the British, for example, the Brits have quite a few competitors in there, but they either have a lot of experience or they have substantial French help in their shore team. Yeah.
And do you know how the French offshore sailing circuit regarded you as an outsider? Or everybody has previous experience in minis or Figaros or Class 40s, and then all of a sudden this Dutch guy pops up and nobody has ever heard of him before, and then boom, there he is.
I was in an ultra-modern boat.
Yeah.
I was regarded as total idiot in the bunch.
As a total idiot.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah. I was not taken serious at all. In fact, even my own team, and I didn't know this until I finished, because they didn't dare to tell me, but my own team, they made bets amongst each other how far I would get. And the furthest, the guy who thought that I would get furthest, he said I would get to Rio de Janeiro on the way down the Atlantic.
So not on the way back?
No, that would have been, 7/8 of the trip. No, just to Rio on the way down.
Okay, yeah.
And most said not after Cascais, not after Lisbon, and a few said I would never get out of the Bay of Biscay. So that was the sort of trust.
There was a lot of faith in you from the start.
My own team had.
Good thing that you knew, or you didn't know beforehand.
But
that was generally in my whole project. It was very good that I didn't know beforehand a lot of things. Otherwise, I would never have done it.
I guess you surprised a lot of people in a positive way. Then I guess you really showed them that it is possible, and that's maybe a good bridge to your preparation, because you did have a fairly short time. You had a year and a half, something like that, in total to prepare?
Yeah, less. 14 months.
How did you prepare both mentally for it and physically? Did you build up your body, and did you also do exercises to really prepare for this, months-long mental battle that was awaiting you?
Yeah, I did a very, very rigorous physical training, and I started right away. As soon as I thought that I might go and do it, I started on a very rigorous program. In fact, I told nearly nobody what I was going to do except my personal trainer. And then I went through a whole sequence of things that I had to learn. Mentally, I didn't do anything. I think you have to be a very stable person to do it. Also a bit crazy. That's maybe not, stably crazy.
Stable genius.
but no, if you have to be repaired by some psychologist, I think you shouldn't start at it.
No.
But is it possible to have some sort of mental preparation, or should it just be the kind of person that you are?
Well, I'm old school. I don't believe in all that. I think you just have to be mentally strong. If you have to be made mentally strong somewhere halfway your life, then probably it's better not to do the
It's a down-to-earth approach.
Yeah. You once said in an interview after, actually, I think it was with one of your interviewers or maybe with you, that you cannot describe to somebody else what this race is. There's simply no words to really do it justice, and I think most of the fans understand that. They don't really understand what it means, but we all, I think, understand that on some level.
Yeah, well, you're 3 or 4 months on the boat. That's very, very long.
Yeah,
you're 3 or 4 months alone, and you're in the most rough and inhospitable areas in the world. You sail past the point Nemo, which is a virtual point, which has been calculated as the point on Earth, on the world that is the furthest away from land, and the closest land is Antarctica. Well, there's not too much help out there.
Yeah. And the closest person to that point is actually up in space.
Yeah, on the ISS. Yeah.
So if something happens there to you, nobody comes for you. It's too far away for the New Zealand or the Australian.
You have your fellow sailors, I guess. That's the only help that
but
you have.
I was already at that time very far behind in the fleet. So nobody comes back to you because that's upwind.
Yeah.
So you're really, really on your own.
Yeah.
And that has a mental effect on you. That we don't experience in normal life. If your car breaks down, with your mobile phone, you phone, and in 10 minutes there's some mechanic who comes and help you or takes you to a safe place or whatever. You're really alone. We are not accustomed to being totally alone. Not just alone, but for days or weeks alone.
But it's not just being alone, it's also facing a huge amount of technical issues, right?
Yes, the Vendee Globe is a huge problem every day and several problems every day, but at least one problem that if you don't solve it, ends your program.
Would you say that the prolonged, of course, you're going to get more and more tired. You're never going to get less tired anywhere during the race. It's just more and more tired. But would you say that, in that place where you say you were a bit behind, you're really on your own, especially in the Southern Ocean, that in some way it really pushes to the absolute maximum of what you as a person can be, that you're kind of forced to be the absolute best, most sharpest, most creative version of yourself, despite the fatigue, despite all that, what is going on around you?
I think every Vendee Globe sailor pushes himself to limits that he doesn't know exist. In general, though, I think that any person can do much more than he believes. But it is the Vendee Globe. Sure, it's technical, and you have to be everything. You have to be able to repair everything a little bit. But and it's sailing wise, it's demanding. But most of all, it's a mental thing.
And do you think that you really discovered some extra side to yourself? Like, do you feel that when you look back, that you're looking back at, kind of the ultimate version of yourself back then, or?
Well, maybe I may be so arrogant as to say that I recognize myself.
Well, I mean that's something.
It having done it and thinking back how I solved problems and how I got through it, of course, with sometimes with help on the satellite phone or email or so. But it's a very good feeling, and it strengthens myself in being quite happy.
Was it a different Pieter that came back to France after 4 months?
I very strongly believe that if something like this changes you, you were not strong enough when you started.
Okay.
But it does confirm a few things. And a little anecdote: when you approach the finish, dozens of little boats and bigger boats, power boats, come out to escort you the last few hours to the finish.
Yeah.
And I was finishing at night in the dark, and there were power boats with huge lights shining on me for pictures and television.
He wasn't pleased.
So I couldn't find I couldn't find the finish. I couldn't see it, and there was lights on the back, and traffic lights, and so on, because you're nearing a shore. I couldn't find it, and they were having these big lights in my eyes, and I couldn't see a thing. So I got the VHF, and I asked nice and politely if they would please switch off those lights, and nothing happened. And then I asked again, and then I asked a little bit more powerful, and still nothing happened. All the lights were on. And I couldn't see a thing. So then I got the radio again, and I said in good old Dutch seaman's language, let's say it that way, if they would ... switch off those lights. And the lights went off, although none of those French understand Dutch, but apparently the intonation was clear.
Yeah.
But just behind me, which I had not seen because I couldn't see anything, was a big rib with my family in it. And just before that happened, one of my daughters has asked my wife, "Do you think he has changed?" And then came this radio communication, and my wife said, "Nope, he's not changed at all."
Still the same Peter.
That's a really good one.
I remember this moment. It was...
you heard that on the radio? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It was very clear. Not even on the radio, because we were sailing next to Peter.
Okay,
You didn't need a radio to hear him asking,
nice.
well... Nice. Not so politely for the lights to be switched off.
But is that also a character, like you're of course an entrepreneur with some weight behind you? Is that also an important character trait, to be somebody who will move the world? Who will not be afraid to break something open in order to change something? Who's not afraid to break things to make them into something new? Let's say, is that an important character trait, you think, in this race?
Yeah, you can't make an omelette without breaking it.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
but and I think that goes for all aspects of life.
Yeah,
if you want an omelette, you have to break.
You have to break some eggs. Yeah. But I think that is a key piece of mindset that I often see with like really good sailors and good entrepreneurs in the same way, that they're not afraid to break stuff. Let's say in general, and that's nice to see that confirmed actually also in this.
Well, if your goal is there and that's your goal, there are various ways to reach it.
Yeah.
And in between the goal and yourself, there's always issues and problems, and there's always thousands reasons not to do it.
Yeah.
There's one reason to do it. That's because you want to get to that goal. And that's in life, not for everybody, not for most people. That's not the way. They sort of go with the flow or see whatever happens. But I think for an entrepreneur, you have the goal. You know that there are going to be a lot of problems. You don't know which problems, you solve them on the way, but you go for the goal. Yeah. And it's the same with the Vendee Globe. The goal is Sable d'Olonne, and you want to get back. And you have problems all the time, but you still want to get home.
Did you ever have a moment on the way, especially maybe right after the start, where it kind of sunk into you that you'd maybe underestimated this? Like, did you ever have a feeling like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into here?
Yes, many times.
Yes?
Many times. But the first time was actually on the day of the departure.
That's a good start.
Didn't take long.
There's maybe, 200 boats out there, following it, big boats, passenger boats, ribs.
They say like 1 million people generally visit that.
It's unbelievable. And then you start and you sail for an hour, 2 hours, and slowly the support boat gets less and less. And then finally it's the last rib out there behind you is the boat with few of your team and your family members.
Yeah.
And when they turn around, that's when it sank in. Fuck. Now I'm alone. Now I'm going to be alone for 4 months.
Wow.
And then that was a very strong feeling. What am I doing here?
Yeah.
And I'd maybe sailed 50 miles or so.
Yeah. Did that take long to sort of sink into the race and really get into like a mental rhythm?
No.
It's like right away for you.
Well, you don't get into a rhythm. because every time something happens, and sailing after the start, the first sort of 48 hours is very tough, because you're sailing in the Bay of Biscay, of which there's hundreds of fishing boats, many of which don't have AIS, who crisscross all over the place. So you don't get in any rhythm. The rhythm that you get, and that lasts for 3-4 months, is that you do whatever you have to do whenever you can do it. I had 3 lists, 3 sheets of paper: the red list, the white list, the blue list. Red was what I had to do as soon as possible. White was important, urgent, and blue was whenever there was time. And that's the rhythm. That determines your rhythm. And in between, you eat. Sometimes very quickly, just a power bar. Sometimes you boil some water and you pour that over the powder. That's also what defines your sleep. If there's things that you have to do to keep the boat alive or floating or working, you do them first. And then you can have all scientific sleep rhythms, but you have to do that. When there's a front coming with 55 knots, that front is not going to wait if your sleep rhythm that has been made in some hospital with electrodes on your head. That front's not going to wait. So you do the things that you have to do. And if that means because of whatever reason that you have to be in the cockpit awake for 45 hours, that's what you do. Away goes your rhythm.
Was that did it take long for you to I don't remember exactly the weather that you had in the start, but did it take long for the sailing to get really hard also? Did you have a bit of an easy start sailing, right? Or did it right away get pretty tough with some lows? Or
no, our exit of Biscay was actually quite benign, was good.
Better than this year.
Yeah, this year was super tough, of course.
No, the exit of Biscay was not that bad.
Yeah, but they had Theta, of course, right around the corner when that Finisterre.
Theta was further down, huh? For Theta was around the
right
north of
Finisterre.
the Canary
a little bit
island. So then they had about 4 or 5 days, I guess.
And you were fully confident in the boat by then? Like once you kind of were in a few days, or when you hit your first storm, you were so in your rhythm that you felt that you could, handle.
Well, we were actually. I don't think in that we met a real storm until into the Southern Ocean, which was probably a worry for the race organization, because usually the exit of the Biscay and then a few other things test the boats, and the weak ones are gone, and that's good, because when you're still in Europe and in the Atlantic, you can be saved. Once you're in the Southern Ocean, anything gets much more difficult. Look at Kevin and Jean.
What's happening now? Or Lewis right now, for example, who's having some autopilot problems, I guess, which is also actually something that I wanted to ask you about, because that's one of the issues that really plagued you for a while, is that your autopilot malfunctioned. Can you tell us a little bit about how that kind of really influenced your race? Because I understand it that you hand steered actually a lot of the race after that. Like, what happened there?
The problem was that the autopilot and the whole software was not tested really. If you have a real good preparation and you have a real good professional team, you have your own software guy in the team. We didn't have that, and if you get a autopilot off the shelf, it just cannot handle the accelerations and decelerations of the boat. On top of that, the reliability is not there. So the software was unstable. It was not tuned into the specifics of these kind of boats, and I had a lot of also hardware problems, and we didn't find out until very, very far in the race that it was because of the wind instruments, that they were feeding wrong information into the system. And that meant that I had a totally unreliable autopilot.
How did you manage that?
It was very difficult. It was actually unmanageable. I capsized 22 times.
Holy!
22 times.
22 times.
One of the things, for example, I had.
Let's let it sink in.
For those who are thinking about, I might want to do this. Think about that. How did you get through that? How did you get the boat under control so that you could still?
Well, so
get
many things
sleep?
were unclear. For example, I had a remote control which I carried on me.
Yeah.
And if I would be sleeping or I would be on the foredeck or whatever, I could intervene and correct. What we found out after a long time, that if I used it 3 times, after the 3rd time, the autopilot would go berserk and turn the boat around. But you don't find out because you don't have that way of thinking.
Yeah.
And then when I had the manufacturer on the phone, they said, "Oh yes, we've heard of that before." Well, then I could nearly climb through the telephone line to strangle them, because if you've heard that before, you don't send a guy on his own into the Southern Ocean with that.
Were you the only one facing these issues?
No, several people, many people were, but as I said, a lot of the well-prepared teams had people in their team and had preparation time, so they could adapt the software to the specifics of the boat. And another thing is, when I came back, well, I think that during my race, I'm on several interviews and so on, I was quite clear in what went wrong and what I thought of them.
Yeah.
But when I came back, I was tapped on the shoulder by several competitors. Great that you said it, because I'm not allowed to say it, because from my sponsor I can only say nice things about everybody and everything.
Yeah.
And I had no sponsor, so I could say what I thought.
Yeah.
And I was quite clear, I think.
I think you definitely were.
So that's quite interesting, actually, to see that, because everybody's selling with sponsors. A lot of every campaign pretty much depends on a sponsor.
Yeah.
And we are never aware of these issues.
You know, most sailors, most skippers send a message to the shore. There it goes through the filter of the PR department of the sponsor. And the sponsor sells this and wants only to be associated with happiness. So it's only good messages.
Yeah.
And in reality, there's so much shit going on the boat.
Is this something you hear on the radio as well from other competitors? That they're telling you on the radio, which is not going to go back home?
You're not on the radio because it's too far away. You're too far apart. But you don't have much contact with others. But when you come back, then you hear, "Oh yeah, I also had that problem. Oh, I also had that."
So what kind of other problems do these skippers
actually,
face
I want to, because we have a limited time, I want to also go away from the problems a bit to the good stuff. Because Imocas are really amazing boats, and a lot of people, of course, would love to have the chance to sail them. Can you tell us a little bit about the things that you really love about these boats, like the moments and the type of sailing with these type of boats? I think it's one of your quotes when you said, like, if people say to me that they sailed, 20 knots or something, I say back to them, how long? Can you tell a bit about the real enjoyment that you actually got from being able to sail a boat like this for days and days and actually weeks and months?
Well, the fantastic thing is, for example, if you're surfing in the Southern Ocean, it's not always bad weather. It's not always snowing or hailing or raining or whatever. It's there's also beautiful days, and there's where the swell, there's huge swell, huge waves, but they're nice and even, and the wind is not always 45 knots. It's also 20, 25, and then on these boats you're going. You're reaching and you're going 22, 25 knots hour after hour, not just running down a wave. Yeah. And you see the speedo go, no, it continue all the time. You hear this humming sound of the boat, and it's in balance, and it's going like like the fire brigade.
Those moments where
that is just
were you happy with the fact that you went with foils?
Super fantastic. Yes.
Yeah.
And then the bow comes up maybe 1.5 meter out of the water, and you're looking at that boat out there, and you see the trough of the next wave, and whoa, how are we going to get through this? The first time, I have one hand on the stop button of the autopilot, and the other hand ready on the tiller. But after a while, you learn that the boat handles it, copes with it. If it's nice balance, that's absolutely fantastic. And then you go into same situation at night, and there's a full moon, and there's maybe some clouds, and you're going there like 20, 25 knots. Wow, through the night. That's when you get through that, that's a fantastic. And another fantastic thing is when you repair something, you've been working at it for 40 hours, something that really makes or breaks your thing, and it works again. Wow.
Did you come to love the boat?
No, I always love my boats. With all my boats, whatever it is, if it's a dinghy or a bigger boat, whatever, I always have a feeling with the boat. And with this boat, I only saw it as a tool. I never really loved this boat.
You described it in interviews before as a tiger, or at least the experience of racing as being locked up with a tiger. Can you explain that a little bit, maybe?
But it's not the tiger is not the boat. The tiger is the whole situation.
Okay.
And the tiger is probably
majestic animal, of course.
Yeah, but with very big teeth and very very hungry.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it was a schizophrenic tiger.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm locked up in a room of 4 by 4 meters.
Yeah.
And in the corner is a tiger, and the tiger has one goal in his life, and that is to feed himself. And I'm the only food.
Yeah.
But I have to live in that room for 3 or 4 months.
It's a constant battle.
It's a constant battle. And it's a constant balance of power, actually. And as long as I keep eye contact with the tiger, he will not attack me. But in a few months' time, I need to sleep, I need to do this, I need to do that. But if I turn my back to him, he'll eat me.
Yeah.
And that is the sort of feeling and tension that you have all the time. It's not always dangerous, because also the tiger sleeps. But he also wakes up quite suddenly, and then there's another front, or there's something falling down, or there's something chafed through that. Wow, you're just there at the right moment to repair it before the mast comes down.
Yeah. Can you give for the viewers a bit a feeling of the amount of checking that you're doing in a day like that? Like, because people, of course, have no idea the intensity of the maintenance of being constantly at sail. Like, how much time does that take every day to just go around the boat, making sure that nothing is like secretly, breaking on you?
I did a complete round. Well, of course not if the weather was horrible. Then you cannot reach all the parts of the boat. But otherwise, I went through every bit and compartment and deck and everywhere at least once in 24 hours, but usually twice.
Yeah.
And then I spend a lot of time in repairing what I saw, or being ahead of the problems. I try to be. And then there's problems that you've not been in time, or that you didn't see coming, and that you repair.
Yeah. And is there one particular moment where, to use a bad word, shit really hit the proverbial fan that you can tell us about? Like a story of some real trouble you landed yourself in during the race, but and also like how you got yourself out of it that were really very meaningful for you?
Yeah, there are so many that I wouldn't know what is the most.
Well, can you pick one?
But my biggest problem, my biggest continuing problem, was the autopilot problem. And when I went through the Indian Ocean, if you look at my track, it's a little bit like Burton has now. It's left, right, it's back. It was all over the place because the boat was unsteerable, and the autopilot was totally not functioning, doing its own thing. And so that was very difficult. And then when I was south of Australia, that was actually sort of the last part where I could still step out, and there were so many problems. There was such a long list of things that were on the red list.
So you thought about quitting?
Absolutely. I mean, there was, if I remember well, there was 42 or 48 issues on the red list that all had to be solved. Otherwise, the boat would not be seaworthy. And after New Zealand to Cape Horn, there's nothing.
It's a lot of miles.
Yeah, that's by Nemo actually.
And and so south of Australia, I just didn't see the solutions anymore. It was it was just a mountain of shit.
Yeah.
And I remember you stopping the boat pretty much for a longer while.
I was extreme. Well, there's no. I had actually the best would have been to anchor behind an island or something, but there were no islands. There are no islands there. But I was lucky that there was a high pressure area, so I sailed the boat into the high pressure area, and then I spent, I don't know, 4 days or so, actually not sailing, just repairing stuff. And but at that moment, I had so much difficulties that I actually had decided to stop. I know that I sent an email to my wife, find out a harbor where there's a freighter connection to Europe, so I can put the boat on the deck and go home.
So what kept you going then? Because you decided to stop, but
there's two
still
things.
You managed to fix everything.
There's two things. My wife never was in favor of the Vendee Globe, understandably. But once I started, once I started the project, she tacked, so to say, and supported me very well. And when I told her that go find me a harbor where I can take a freighter home, then she said, go to sleep, think about it. It's anyway 4 days sailing until you're in Australia. Don't mention to the race organization that you're quitting. Just think about it and think about what's happening in Holland. And I think, what's happening in Holland? What's happening in Holland? You're in your capsule. So I thought, wow, what's happening in Holland? And then I started just thinking about it, not about me, but was it a terrorist attack? What's wrong in Holland? And then she said, go and look at Facebook. Well, Facebook on the boat is quite difficult because there's a lot of bandwidth, so it's very slow. So I opened it and I saw hundreds of messages of people that I know, but also people that I don't know. People from Canada, people in South America, in Europe, in Holland. And all like, Pieter, don't give up. Pieter, go ahead. Even if you are slow, go ahead. And then I thought, yeah. Even if I have to swim home, I'm going to go home.
Nice.
And then I switched my mindset completely. I said, all this electronic crap, I'm going to forget it. Then I simplified the whole situation. So the boat was steered in a different way, but was reliable again. And then you see suddenly my track becoming much more fluid.
So what did you change?
Yeah.
Well, you try to sail the boat mostly on autopilot on wind, but the wind instruments were totally unreliable. So those I switched off. Then I switched to compass. I had 2 electronic compasses. Both of them burned out. So then I had nothing to feed the autopilot anymore. And then I managed to connect it to a loose GPS. So I sailed on course over ground, basically. Well, but it's a derivative of the derivative of information. So it reacts very slowly, but it brought the boat home.
You didn't capsize anymore after that?
Not because of autopilot problems. I capsized 1 or 2 times because, that happens. You jibe and you lose control or something.
But that happens every time for every skipper in the race.
Everybody flats out
a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're moving towards the last question actually, but this one is really also from the viewers and for you. So I'll ask you to really dig into this one as much as possible, and that is that. If there are some people watching right now who maybe somewhere in the back of their mind are thinking, well, if I get good enough, if maybe at some point I would get in the position, what would you say, where do you start for people who are like, I want to at some point, be able end up doing this race? What advice can you give them?
You have to really, really want to do it. Mm-hmm. And that want is not the type of want like I want ice cream or I want to go to the movies with my girlfriend. Mm-hmm. It must be an unstoppable inner wish, not from the outside, not because you have a sponsor or not because this or that, but you have to do completely from yourself that you want to do it and that you cannot control that you must do it. To make a bad comparison is like when you need to vomit, you cannot stop it.
Yeah.
You just need to get it out of yourself. Mm-hmm. If you have diarrhea, you just must go to that toilet quickly. It's the same sort of push. It sounds very bad to say it, but it must be something that you cannot control.
Yeah, it's a bit like being in love with a woman who's really bad for you. That would be my metaphor, I think.
Oh, I never met them.
No.
I have only met such nice women.
So Florian, what about you?
But maybe we should interview you now.
Yeah. No, I'm going now.
It starts to become interesting.
Because I'm interested, because you started analyzing this race from day to day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You came in touch with the Vendee Globe during the previous Volvo Ocean race.
Yeah.
What is your motivation, or is there some part of you that wants to sail the Vendee Globe?
Well, I can't exactly, answer that with no. So
this story, Pieter's story, does it change anything?
Well, it's definitely interesting. Like, of course, I have also, a wife who's very much in love with me, who I'm very much in love with also, who would find it very hard to let me do something like that. But I think ultimately she would support it if I wanted to do it. I personally don't think I have the experience for it yet, because I've only been sailing for 4 years. I mean, very, very intensely. I sailed minis. I'm actually going to sail a class 40 this summer, so that's kind of really looking forward to that. Maybe one day, I don't know. Like, I don't think that I feel that particular desire. Right now, I would say only a total idiot would do this, right? That's my honest feeling, right now, because it's just so crazy. It's so extreme, but I also really value that extremeness, and being an entrepreneur, being able to sort of step out there and build an organization from scratch, or come with some idea where everybody always tells you that's never going to work, right? I've heard that several times in my life, and people said that's never going to go anywhere, and then proving them wrong after several years of hard work and actually making it work. And that side of it, being one of the most extreme things in the world, that does have a certain attraction to me. Like, they say this can be done, they say this is really hard, and some little part of me goes, well, maybe this sounds like it's something for me.
There's something that says, right? There's no way back, huh?
There's no way back.
That probably explains the name of your boat also, I guess. So
but does it have to be extreme? I mean, there's another race that has been sailed for the second time in 2018, the Golden Globe race, which is also the first Golden Globe race in 86 was the race that the Vendee Globe in the end was based upon. That's way less extreme.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have modern day technology. I mean, you determine your position on the basis of a sextant, which is completely different. Would that have some sort of...
I'm definitely an adventurer. So I find myself, upwind, downwind racing has very little interest for, good fun, but it's not really deeply interesting to me. But something like the 24 hours in Holland, for example, that's something that I'm looking at for maybe for next season to try. And this type of longer races, I think that's very interesting. Something that keeps that adventurous type of thing, like my wife and I go snowboarding in Russia, and one of the things I like the most is just climb the mountain yourself where you really can't snowboard, and you're just climbing for half the day, and then you can go down once. But this type of adventure, I really love this type of stuff, and I love that in sailing also, and solo sailing also. Like, I go a lot on my own on just adventures for a day or two, just solo sailing, and then I anchor somewhere in the night and I just barbecue a little and I sail back the next day. And I absolutely love to do those type of trips. Yeah.
So Pieter, for someone that is also somewhat of an idiot and who has decided to do this, how many years of preparation would you say is needed to be able to get into the top 5?
Well, if your preparation is built onto experience and experience on solo sailing and so on, then it's maybe 10 years, and you have to be in your second Vendee Globe. But then you have to build that on top of experience in minis, class 40s and so on. If you come from normal sailing, 15 years as a minimum, and then really focused.
Yeah. So if you want to do this, start now, start tomorrow, buy a mini, buy a Figaro, or whatever you can get your hands on, and start sailing.
Yeah. That's the tip, guys. And I guess on that note, I think we already went a little bit over an hour. So I want to thank you both for an amazing conversation. Of course, you guys check out the website seawolvestv.com for more. And I hope that maybe somewhere in the future we'll do this again, gents. Thank you very much.
That was fun. Thanks.
Thank you. Hello, Seawolf. So very short update because I really didn't have time after montaging this entire interview to actually do a full update for today. But there are a few little details that I didn't want to keep from you because they're so cool. First of all, Lewis Burton on board of Bureau Vallée 2 apparently fixed his autopilot, doing really great, made his way back to 3rd place, so really amazing, and I'm super happy for Lewis that he was able to fix his boat and is fully back in the race. So that is very cool. Rest of the fleet doing good, no great breakages or anything else that I really need to keep you updated on, so that is good. Another thing very interesting is the Jules Verne, because right now actually the lead that Sodebo had, I'm looking at the tracker right now here, as you guys can see, and it's actually run back to only 139 miles. Do you remember 2 days ago it was almost 622 again at that point? So the Jules Verne record is really hanging by a hair, and the crew on board of Sodebo is really having to work their butts off in order to stay ahead of this record. So if you have a chance to take a look at the tracker, there's some really cool info to see there. They do have good weather right now, good wind, so I think they will be able to stay just slightly ahead of Edek Sport, but it's going to be real tough for them in the next day. And so update on the next talk. So I am talking to Sam Davis later today, so that will be in the show tomorrow, and that's really it for today. So thank you all for watching. Tomorrow we'll do a big show again. I actually have a giveaway tomorrow, something from the previous shows I'm going to give to one of you that I think you're going to be really happy and fun and excited about. So that'll be cool. And so that's it for today. Make sure to like, subscribe, go to the website seawolvestv.com for more info and for our amazing shop with all of the Seawolf hoodies and t-shirts and caps and all that other good stuff. And I'll talk to you again over coffee tomorrow.